Hello guys, welcome to a new episode of Teen Talks. Today we're with Professor Kenji. He is a professor of law in NYU and the director of Meltzer Center for Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Miguel. It's great to be with you.
So, my first question is, what first sparked your curiosity about how people hide and cover parts of themselves in professional and social spaces?
Yeah, so initially it was very personal because I myself am a member of the LGBTQ plus community. I'm a gay man. And so I thought about my own trajectory towards maturity as moving through three different phases of assimilation. So first it's convert, change your sexual orientation. Then it's pass, be in the closet. And then third is what I call covering, which is where you accept who you are and you're open, but you still edit or modulate or balance because your identity is an outsider identity. And the more I thought and wrote about that, the more I realized as a law professor that the law actually doesn't protect you at all against that form of hiding or downplaying. And I also realized that it was something that cut across every single outsider identity. So women or people of color, racial minorities can't convert or pass, but they can cover and are asked to cover all the time. So this is the woman who is trained not to talk about her children because she'll be taken less seriously as a employee, or the person who's black who's told to straighten their hair if they want to be seen as professional, or the person who's religious who's told not to wear their cross or any kind of religious paraphernalia at work. And so to me, as a scholar of discrimination, it became the kind of final frontier of thinking about what it would mean to live in a truly inclusive society.
And it definitely connects to your Meltzer Center, right? And what does true inclusion look like beyond these policies and statements that countries give and governments?
Yeah, exactly. So the Meltzer Center, as you're saying, is the Center for Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging. And I'm really glad that you put it that way, because I think oftentimes people look at a civil rights legal scholar and they think, why are you also running the Center on Inclusion? And for me, there's much more continuity than there is rupture in between the two, because I actually think of the law as being critically important in ensuring civil rights, but law is a really blunt instrument. It's a meat axe, right? And so a lot of the things that we're dealing with in our day-to-day lives are so subtle. It's a comment that's made by a colleague or a coworker or what have you. And the law is never going to catch up. You would never bring a lawsuit in the first place, right? Exactly. And so it needs to be the work of culture and making sure that the culture around you is inclusive. And so that's why I founded my center 10 years ago on diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Yeah,
it's been a long time.
Yeah, but to answer your question, I think the notion of real inclusion is this notion of you should be able to be included not in spite of, but because of your difference, so that you should be able to bring your differences and your diversity into the workplace.
What makes us unique, it's good to have differences.
Exactly.
You've written a lot of books, author of 5 books, and in the right, say the right thing in your book, many teens want to say good things, want to be good allies, but they fear saying the wrong thing or making mistakes. What advice would you give them for showing both courage and humility?
Yeah, it's a really beautiful question. So I do think that this is the kind of dilemma of allyship. And the first thing that I would recommend is to just think about a kind of triangle where there's 3 people, right? There's you as an ally, and then there's the affected person, the person who's been harmed, who needs your allyship, and then there's the source of non-inclusive behavior, right? And then to think about that as a game of musical chairs. I think that's where the humility comes in, because oftentimes we say, oh, well, that shouldn't have happened. And then we come down on the source of non-inclusive behavior like a ton of bricks, and we cancel them or we criticize them, right? But tomorrow that's going to be us. So we're going to mess up in some way and say something that we wish we hadn't said, right? And so extending sort of grace and compassion to that person is critically important. Another piece of humility is making sure that you're helping the affected person, the kind of person in the middle of the triangle, in the way that they wish to be helped rather than the way that you wish to help them. So, I fall into this all the time myself. I mean, my students are, you're younger than even some of my students. And so when I talk to my students, oftentimes I say oh, I want to be your ally and I know exactly what you need because I've been in the teaching profession for 25 years. So let me help you in the way right? And of course, I can suggest that to the student, right? But if I really want to be an ally to you as an affected person, that means that I have to listen to what you want and help you in the way that you seek to be helped, rather than the way that I deem fit to help you, right?
So would you say it's very important to teach how to include people, and also don't judge at the first time if they mess up? You would say that's very important?
Exactly, yeah. And it's a skill like anything else. You know, one of the things that we try to point out in this book that you mentioned is that everyone thinks that you kind of have this or you don't, that it's a feature of your character or your temperament. Some people are very emotionally intelligent and some people aren't. And I'm sure there are natural ranges in how emotionally intelligent people are or aren't. But to me, this is a skill like anything else. It's like learning a language, right? So if I were to try to learn Portuguese, I might never achieve native level fluency, right? But if I kept going at it, you know, I would get better. So I think that goes to the courage piece of what you were asking about. Is it requires not just humility, but the courage to say, I am inevitably going to make mistakes, right? But I should look at those mistakes as the predicate to getting better, right? Rather than saying, oh, I made a mistake, so I'm going to like withdraw from this game.
So just connecting to your other type of work, you also the Meta's Oversight Board. And you know, social media is, you know, it's a big place, and often there's a lot of bullying in it and stuff. What role do you think platforms like, you know, Instagram, Snapchat should play in creating a healthier and more inclusive online environment?
Yeah, so if I can sort of flex a little bit about the board, I'm very proud to be on the Oversight Board because I think that it is one of the mechanisms through which platforms are forced to do better. So we are a board of 21 people scattered throughout the world who look at Meta's community standards and the enforcement of those community standards against human rights norms. So just to give you an example, there was a Polish flag case that was bullying against trans individuals that said curtains that hang themselves. And so there was a meme of a pride flag that was hung like a curtain. And so the effective message with that and other indications in the post was, you know, trans people should engage in self-harm or commit suicide, right? Obviously, this is totally unacceptable, but somehow it made it under the radar of Meta's moderation standards. And so we actually came in as a board and said, you have to take that down on bullying and harassment grounds. And, you know, it's 3 billion users on the platform, right? And so I went home and I said to my husband, like, I've been working on LGBTQ plus rights for 25 years, but I think I actually helped more people today, right, when we issued this opinion as a board. It wasn't my personal decision, but as a board, when we issued that opinion, than I've done in the 25 years previously, if you just think about the number of people who were affected by that decision.
But would you say there needs to be a stronger, like, stricter, how could I say, policy to post, or what would change?
Yeah, it's a really good question because, you know, one of the things that platforms have a really hard time with is being smart about what is problematic content and what is not, right? So even in the context that we were just describing, we've had a lot of cases where words that, at least to people in my generation, would have seemed very, very pejorative have been reclaimed, right, by younger generations. So think about the word queer, for example, in the LGBTQ plus community. That's generally an affirming, at least can be used in an affirming positive way, right? So it's really hard to create rules that are independent of context to say every time this word is used, you have to automatically take it down. So, you know, to give something to Meta, I think that is what makes this hard, right? Which is that they just can't have, you know, AI go through all of this, at least currently, right, and take down, you know, every single instance of the word, because sometimes the word will be more positive. So I think one of the really interesting things that we'll see whether it materializes or not is whether or not AI will get smart enough to be able to discern that context, so it doesn't need to be a sophisticated human reviewer every single time looking at these the same word and saying, in this case, this is really harmful. In this other case, it was a reclamation of pride.
Do you think AI will be used as a tool for optimization, basically, for posts?
Inevitably, yeah. I think that's where we're headed. But that, of course, raises its own, right, ethical issues.
Yeah, there's the pros and cons of everything. So my parting question would be, if you could share one message with the next generation from your broader work on equality, what would it be? I think that there's been such, I've led a very fortunate life because every time I needed an equality door to open, it opened, right? So
when I was, growing up, the Lawrence case was decided in the United States, which decriminalized same-sex sexuality in 2003. And then when I wanted to get married, marriage became available, same-sex marriage became available in the United States. And then when my husband and I wanted to start a family, surrogacy laws changed, right? So in some ways, like my passion about equality, not just hopefully for myself, but for others as well, really comes from the idea of like, this is not just a theoretical thing for me. It actually made a huge difference in my own life, and hopefully it makes a difference in other people's. So I think that we had a lovely chat, before the camera started rolling about what your favorite interview was. And you were talking about somebody who was running boats, right?
Yeah.
And who just had such joy in what they did. And I do wake up every morning and sort of pinch myself, right, that I get to argue for the equal treatment and the dignity of other people, because I know exactly what a huge difference that's made in my own life. And so it's a privilege to be able to do that now on behalf of others.
Look, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your message. Guys, this was Teen Talks. See you next time. Bye-bye.